Like, there's been a lot of talk about my job for a long time, right? For a couple months. And they just kept playing and kept working and trying hard and weren't worried about that. They were worried about getting better and playing hard for their coach. And I'm proud of that.
So it finally happened. The Rockets have let go of Stephen Silas. Who would have saw this coming? Well, maybe we did, because in our last podcast, I was talking to Dave Hardesty from Clutch Fans, and he basically put 100% that this was going to happen. And, everybody kind of saw this coming. This was something that a lot of us would have saw happening earlier, but for different factors that we're not going to really get into. It seems like the Rockets chose to stay with him a little bit longer. There's been a lot of different takes about it, and there's a new article out by Kelly Iko from The Athletic that really goes through some interesting statements. I mean, these are things that if you guys are Chop Shop listeners, me and Space have talked about pretty much for the past, since we started the channel, right? We've pointed out all these things. It's just interesting that they come out after the fact, right? But if you are somebody that watches basketball with a keen eye, then you would have seen all these things. And these are things we talked about a lot in the post-game lives that we do about some of the issues that the Rockets have and some of the things that were just didn't look right. They just didn't look right. But in this video, I'm going to just try to talk about some of the things that, I've seen from Stephen Silas as a coach and why he finds himself in the position he's in right now. Is it fair? Is it unfair? Let's get into it. So, I mean, is it fair for Stephen Silas to be let go as the Rockets head coach after being here for 3 years? Yes, it is fair because this is the business of the NBA. Let's start there. This is not an attack on Stephen Silas as a human being, a person, by all accounts, great person, great human, great, dad, husband, friend, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, when you're hired to do a job, we're not going to grade you about how nice you are to people, right? Can you get your job done? Did you do what you were supposed to do? Now, you could look at it from the perspective of if he was hired to be a tank coach, then yeah, he still deserves to get fired because apparently by the Houston Rockets, the tank is over. So how can you judge a coach that is set up on a team that's meant to fail in order for them to acquire as much talent as possible? You could still judge him. You could still judge him because there are little things and little kind of evidence of changes and improvement that you want to see from a team that has as much talent as the Rockets had. Now, just to lay this out, I hold nothing fully like 100% on Stephen Silas. Where the Rockets are right now as an organization is a shared collective group project between him, Rafael Stone, and their ownership. By not prioritizing certain things like having veterans on the rosters to support the young guys, by having good coaches that are, expert in what they do at this stage in their careers to support Stephen Silas, by not having the right kind of relationship between the front office and the coaching staff to really have a conducive kind of work environment that is productive to good basketball. And we've complained about the quality of the basketball that we've seen all season and just the overall perception of incompetence the Rockets give off. Like they come off as a very incompetent team and from top to bottom. And as it turns out, maybe not all of it is true, but a lot of it is true. Now, Kelly Iko, like I said earlier, he had an article in The Athletic that he kind of detailed this. It's almost like a eulogy of Stephen Silas's coaching career, starting from the 2020 season, leading up to him being let go as the Rockets coach. And there are some interesting quotes in that article that I want to talk about. So I'm going to point out some of the ones that are more interesting to me. I'm going to expound on them just a little bit more. So one of the first quotes that I seen that stood out to me in the article, the link to The Athletic for you to read the article is going to be in the description of this video. If you're not subscribed to The Athletic as a Rockets fan, I encourage you to do so because they basically provide a lot of great insight to the team. And this is, this article is filled with a lot of little nuggets. First quote, this is regarding the lack of structure on the team. Quote, however, sources close to Green, talking about Jaylen, push for more structure and play calling, believing the freelance system and lack of a true floor general weren't conducive to a rookie's development. This is like, if we're looking at this like a court case, evidence number one is kind of the mismatch between Stephen Silas's coaching philosophy and the players that he had. As Space would put it, The ingredients didn't match the meal he was trying to cook. And this to me was one of the biggest issues. And we saw this repeatedly with Jalen struggles early on in the season till he figured it out, and then to Jabari struggling well into halfway past the season as a rookie. And as JJ Redick put it, basically Jabari is like a person stranded in the middle of the ocean without a life craft. And that's what the Rockets and our system and structure or lack thereof put our rookies in doing so. If you're going to be coming in and, everybody says, oh, he was brought in to coach James Harden, he was brought in to coach Russell Westbrook. Well, guess what? That's the business of the NBA. And he admitted this much in his post-game conference. The things change. You can't just say, well, the reason I am 3 years down the line and not able to do my job is because 3 years ago, I thought I would be coaching a Hall of Fame players. Hey, you've had more than enough time to adapt and adjust. And I just don't think that Coach Silas never really made that adaptation. He never adapted to what he had. And the fact that we have our players basically being played out of position. A lot of times they're playing in a system that requires a lot of high level thinking from whoever the ball handler is, not having a point guard in that situation. And then the other players off the ball to be able to be in positions where the ball handler is supposed to read and then pass the ball and generate offense for them. It's just it's a bad deal. It's a bad deal to have those two combinations. Then you compound that with Jabari Smith being a player that is not a self-creator, and it leads to him struggling and looking like one of the worst players in the league for a good half of the season, which, as I spoke of earlier, is going to impact him going forward. It's already starting to impact him as a all-rookie first-team member, because he's not going to be on the first team. And I think that's directly related to how he was utilized and his play on the Rockets. And it took Jalen Green going supernova to end the season, damn near challenging a record set by Allen Iverson in most 30 games to really get himself on that first team, because there was a lot of discussions about whether he would make it as a first team member. So this was something that, was a red flag to me, that you have these players, but you're not adapting to the fact that they're young. Your offense, Stephen Silas's offense, relies on, we've seen if you're going to run a lot of those isolations, a lot of those pick and rolls, then you need somebody that's a savant handling the ball. And when you don't have that player handling the ball, then you may need to pivot away to maybe going into a little bit more motion, a little bit more movement, maybe share the ball a little bit more. And it seemed like they were starting to get there towards the end, but it was too little too late. One of the biggest stats that I always look at for how just bad our offense was in stretches was the pick and roll frequency. We were top 5 in pick and rolls ran throughout the season. And this has been the case, but we were 27th in the points per possession. But we steadily kept on running these plays, regardless of being one of the worst high frequency pick and roll teams in the NBA. Most of the teams that rank top 5 in the pick and roll have like really good point guards. And that's if you're going to do something that you suck at over and over and over again, you're going to get a bad result. So once again, wouldn't be surprised if it ended up costing you your job. Another quote that I saw in this article that was interesting, it says the interference reached a point. Now, this is speaking of something we've touched on, is Rafael Stone dabbling with the coaches and what their game plans was and their rotations. So Kelly from the article quotes, the interference reached the point where Silas eventually had to inform Stone he could no longer halt the coaches' practice sessions. Stephen had to address the front office and check them. One source familiar with the matter said, such an incident never happened again. That is utterly unprofessional for Stone to be able to stop a practice of his coach. He's undermining his coach doing that. That's why I said the blame of what the Rockets are at this moment, not saying they're going to be like that going forward, but with the blame of what they are right now is not just Stephen Silas' burden. Rafael Stone created this environment. He picked the players that don't fit Stephen Silas' system. Now, I blame Silas for not adapting, but the GM is the personnel that hires the coach and that brings the players in. Then to top that off by interfering and undermining your coach, who is not vocal, is just bad for business. To quote Jay-Z, when a team got beef between the post and the point, this puts the ring in jeopardy. And this is exactly what's happening. When your front office and your coaches are not on the same page, you're not going to look good as a franchise. It just causes chaos and it causes a lot of things. And this kind of showed itself in, once again, leading to that lack of structure. If you are seen being undermined by your players, and they know that you don't have ultimate control. Why should they listen to you, especially when you're dealing with a bunch of young men that the Rockets have? Having that structure is going to be ultimately what is going to be able to get these guys to be able to get in line and understand what their roles are in the NBA. But that was always a failing for the Rockets and for Stephen Silas, and he has to own that because, that's your team. You're the coach. You're the manager. You're the guy that they look to, and if you're not able to project that strength and that kind of sturdy leadership, then it kind of shows up in how the guys act on the court. So the third quote that stands out to me was, referring to Silas's direct kind of influence and leadership on the players. This quote says, sources say Silas experienced difficulty at times connecting with players like Christian Wood and Kevin Porter Jr., evident in the suspensions for both in January 2022. Wall and Silas were close and might have helped establish order, but the decision to exclude the veteran point guard from the rotation was a directive from management. Between Wood, Green, Eric Gordon, and Porter, there was an underlying battle for a pecking order. As a result, there was an overall lack of leadership. Once again, when a team got beef between the post and the point, this puts the ring in jeopardy. This is a issue between Stephen Silas's lack of, just like I said, projecting and being that voice that fills the void of a leadership, and Rafael Stone undermining him. This is bad business. This is bad business. This is bad business. And we'll talk about this more a little bit later on, but it's not ideal to have this type of work environment for a coach or for the players. That is, honestly, if I'm going to, raise it up a little bit, that's on Stone. That's on Stone in the sense of he's the one that's in charge of the work environment, but it's also on Stephen Silas because you got to stand your ground. You got to stand your ground, and you have to set precedent and set standards and set markers to say, hey, this is me. This is what I do, and you have to let me do my job. If you don't want me to do my job, let me know. But to collect a paycheck and really just let things go any type of way and let your boss kind of bully you around, at the end of the day, it's on your record, it's on your watch, and it's going to affect your legacy. And I just feel like he should have done more. But the deal with KPJ not wanting to check himself out of games, with we seen what Christian Wood was doing. All of that is just things being allowed by the front office. So once again, that does beg the question. But at the end of the day, he should have done more. Stephen Silas should have done more because if he knew he was going to go out like this, you should have made the ultimatum like either this happens or that happens. So he is culpable in that. Another interesting quote from the article states that Silas was consistently tactically inferior to his opponents and failed to find consistent rotations or substitution patterns, notably juggling the idea of staggering Porter, Sengun, and Green to augment the team's playmaking and creation issues. His vision of a freelance system clashed with the inexperienced players, and he never adapted adequately to their skill sets. I just basically talked about this with the pick and roll stuff. This goes over, a million things. We've seen the roster changes late in games, game on the line. You're going to leave out this terrible late third quarter, early fourth quarter lineup against the other team's starters. Just bad adjustment, not staggering Kevin Porter Jr. and Jaylen, not exploring different lineups. We haven't seen them even pair certain players together. Never got to really see KPJ play off ball. We don't know a lot about what Tate can do. We don't know what the full extent Jay Gupp can do. We don't know what the full extent Bari and Tari could have played together, how much impact that would be on a long-term basis. Just started to see that towards the end of the season. He's always too little too late. And to me, those are flashes of a coach that is not good. He is a young coach and he still needs to learn all these things. But, as the Rockets are trying to pivot to something else, he's just showed that these are things that he wasn't good at. He was thoroughly outcoached in a lot of games. Now, this has nothing to do with Stone. This is totally squarely on Stephen Silas and his tenure as the Rockets coach. Since he's been here, the Rockets in 2020-2021, offensive rating 107, defensive rating 114. We ranked 27th in both categories and 27th in net rating. That was in the first season here. Second season here, 26th in offensive rating, 30th in defensive rating. This last season, 27th in offensive rating, 29th in defensive rating. So we've been a bottom three defense pretty much his entire tenure here, and a bottom 4 or 5 offense pretty much his entire tenure here. He's had veteran lineups. He's had veteran players on the roster. When we went on the 15-game losing streak, it was not a bunch of rookies on that team. The only rookie on the starting 5 was Jalen Green. That the court had Tice, Wood, Tate, Kevin Porter Jr., Everett Gordon. These are real players, and he still really didn't do anything with that. So you've had players that were vets. You've had young players, and you still couldn't translate that. They've been either 30th in transition, offense or defense in the past 2 years, ranking bottom last in both. And that's that to me, that's schematics and coaching. That's schematics and coaching. Players don't know how to fill lanes when they run. Players don't know where to be positionally on fast breaks. Little stuff like that. Those are just basic fundamental basketball things that they never really got a handle around. So these are the things that lend to you showing that you're overwhelmed and you're not really ready to coach a team that's at this level. And I think that's ultimately really what it comes down to for him, is that where he was brought in to do, yes, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, cool. But at the end of the day, your job was to coach this team. And this team never overperformed any time during this rebuild. Every time that the Rockets were expected to be the bottom team, they were the bottom team. And to me, as I said in my other video, when I spoke about what I look for in coaches, I look at two extremes. Are you going to be a bad team or are you going to be a contender? To me, everything in the middle is going to be driven largely by your players. But if you're going to be a bad team, if you're a good coach, can you outperform with a bad team? And if you're a good coach on a great team, can you take them to the promised land? Those are my two judgments that clearly show me they got a good coach. It takes a great coach to be able to get a team that's a contender to the championship and to get a bad team to overperform. Whether you're tanking or not tanking, I've never seen a stretch of Stephen Silas that told me that, hey, this guy really got something. We've seen stretches from other coaches that even their teams are bad, they'll win a couple of games, they'll go on a run for a month or two, then they have to shut it down on purpose by benching good players in the middle of the season. We've had games where we've tried to win and just get blown out repeatedly. There was a time, I think around the New Orleans and Charlotte losses, where he got ejected. He was coaching for his life and his job was pretty much on the line around the time where his I think it was around when his dad passed. We still lost. He tried and he just couldn't do it. And I think it comes down to just collectively, he just doesn't have what it takes at this moment in his coaching career for this team. Now, JB Bickerstaff and Jacques Vaughn and all these other guys that have had bad first head coach tenures, maybe he comes around a couple years later and becomes a good coach. Maybe he doesn't. But I don't think this is the end for him. I don't think this is where it's going to, stop as far as coaching. He had a bad stint here. I'm sure people are going to talk about all the bad stuff going on in Houston. And this Iko article is not the only thing. There's going to be a lot that comes out over the next few weeks. I feel like Rafael Stone is on the clock as we speak as our general manager, because once you fire that first coach, you hire your second coach, the next thing we're going to be looking at is the general manager. Now, there's a lot of things floating around by what he does. I'm curious to see whether he continues to do these things, because the last quote that I'm going to talk about from this article says, sources say the Rockets' initial coaching candidates are expected to be the Raptors head coach Nick Nurse, which I've talked about in numerous videos I've made, Warriors assistant Kenny Atkinson, which I've talked about, Lakers coach Frank Vogel, ex-Hornets coach James Borrego, and Raptors assistant Adrian Griffin, and ex-Celtics coach Ime Udoka. Great candidates, all of that. Can Stone give them autonomy? Because at the end of the day, if he's doing the same crap that he did with Stephen Silas, we're going to be in the same position. So I'm trying to figure out who's the common denominator for the dysfunction that the Rockets have, or the perceived dysfunction. Was it Stephen Silas? Can't blame him anymore now that he's gone. We're going to find out. Stone, is it you or is it Tillman that's allowing all of this to happen? The Rockets need to get their affairs in order. All this Bush League stuff they're doing, all this it's a joke to AAU. They can't really do that anymore if they want to be taken seriously by the NBA, be taken seriously by free agents, be taken seriously by players on the trade market, be taken seriously by coaching candidates, be taken seriously by the media, be taken seriously by agents and agencies and parents of draft picks. They have to get this stuff straightened out. And Tillman needs to put his foot down and get all this in order. Do they need consultants to come in? Do they need some a co-GM or president of basketball ops or somebody else within the organization to have more of a louder voice in the room to prevent all of this kind of ego swinging and pissing contest that people are having, try to assert their powers and their influence on the organization? If they don't do this, if they don't take care of this, it won't matter who our coach is. We're going to end up in the same spot. So I hope that they can get this done. And honestly, this needed to be done. This Band-Aid needed to be ripped. Good luck to Stephen Silas wherever he goes as a coach. He served this purpose here in Houston, and I'm sure that the players that played under him are going to be grateful to him. I'm sure he's a great man to be around, and he's probably imparted a lot of wisdom about life and basketball for these players. It just never translated to better quality of basketball on the court, and I think ultimately that's what took him out as a coach. I'm sure he's going to end up somewhere else because he is coaching royalty because of Paul Silas, and he is well loved and respected around the NBA. He's going to have an assistant job waiting for him at one of the many teams that his father's influenced and he's been on, and they know that he is a great assistant. Just not it in the head coaching department right now. Good luck to him. Good luck to his family. I'm not gonna, I know we like go hard on the Rocket stuff. At the end of the day, a man lost his job. Good luck to him, and you hope he can, enjoy his couple of millions that he made and be able to continue finding work in different ways, which I'm sure he will. But y'all let me know what y'all think. Are you happy that Coach Silas was let go? Do you think it was his fault that the Rockets have struggled so much on the basic fundamentals of basketball and quality basketball? We're not talking about wins and losses. We know we're trying to tank for Victor, right? We're talking about just basketball. You guys let me know. Was it, is it Stone? Does he need to go next? Is Tillman tripping? Are we in the right direction? I honestly think we are, that this is the first step towards rehabbing our perception around the league. But y'all let me know in the comments. Let me know in the comments. I'm curious to hear what y'all think. I know some of y'all are going to be happy. Some of y'all are going to be sad. Some of y'all don't care. Some of y'all are just ready to get Wemby. But y'all let me know in the comments and keep rocking with the Chop Shop as we keep dropping that fire.